Horniman Museum and Gardens, which is just down the road, also simply known as Hornimans. So the Horniman is a museum in Forest Hill, and it's famous for housing a massive walrus, amongst other things, i.e. a very, very big taxidermy collection. It's actually kind of funny where the term walrus comes from. It actually comes from the Dutch word walrus, which originally came from Old Norse, which was the language that the Vikings spoke. And the term was horosvarer, excuse my pronunciation, any Vikings that happen to be watching, which means horse whale. And if you think about it, they do actually look a little bit like a horse and a whale. Kind of. So yeah, this horse whale, this walrus, is like its flagship artifact. So about the walrus was brought back to the UK by Horniman himself. The walrus is unbelievably fat, and this is because the taxidermists at the time didn't actually know what a walrus looked like, so they just stuffed it within an inch of its life. Yeah, it was probably the first time they ever seen a walrus with their eyes, so they stuffed it and stuffed it and stuffed it and stuffed it, and so it was somewhat overstuffed, and it has been there for 100 years. So that's a very long time to be that full. So some cool facts about walruses include their scientific name is Odobenus rosemarus, which means tooth-walking seahorse, and they can run on all four flippers on land as fast as humans, and their tusks can grow up to 3 feet long, pretty long. So that's all very interesting, but anyway, Frederick Horniman, who the museum is named after, actually inherited his father's business, Horniman's Tea. You know, this guy was a really interesting guy. He kind of wanted to raise the standards of living across all of society, so he was kind of trying to bring education, culture and that kind of thing to the masses so that everyone had equal access to it. So quite an honourable pursuit, in my opinion. He was originally from a Quaker family in Somerset, and his family business was booming. So this was obviously that family business I spoke about in the tea trade. And yeah, he kind of went around the world and he collected all these like objects and specimens and things from around 1860 onwards. And he collected objects that either appealed to fancy or to him seemed likely to interest and inform those who had not had the opportunity to visit distant lands. So it's quite funny, like he was going around collecting all these things, and his house in 1888 was apparently so full of that Rebecca, Frederick's wife, is reported to have said, either the collection goes or we do, referring to her and their children. I actually once went to an amazing garden party. It was in a house, a massive house, owned by a family who did a similar thing. They just kind of collected all these kind of oddities from around the world. And yeah, it was all a bit la-di-da, but in a kind of cool medieval way. So let me explain. They had this like massive 3D picture of a virus as you were walking up the stairs. It's kind of like just sticking out at you, and that was kind of weird. And they also had like a monkey in the loft, just this kind of preserved monkey in the loft, all sorts of things, all sorts of random things all over their house. In the garden, they were serving up a massive, very glamorous picnic, and loads of very interesting and intriguing dishes, like for example, tongue sandwiches were on the menu, which were made of cow's tongue. And yeah, I must admit, when I tried it, it was very tonguey. Yeah, you could taste the taste buds. Like it wasn't very nice in my opinion, but I'm sure some people do like tongue more than me. I'm talking about cow's tongues, you know, tongues in general are okay. Anyway, people were also invited to do like a variety act, of course, which was kind of cute. So you had like a little girl who gave a little flute recital, which was really, really nice. And you had a group of dancers who did sort of some kind of weird macabre dance around the garden, so that was kind of cool. And there was a magician. People were kind of saying, you do a bit of poetry, why don't you get up? So I would have looked very silly indeed if I hadn't taken the opportunity. Hi, I said shyly, my name's X and I'm an accountant. And I might be, I might not be, but there you have it. VAT returns, VAT. Return. Batman. And was it for this? I ask you, woman in the pink scarf. And was it for this? I ask you, sir, in your green tie. And was it for this? I ask you, Mademoiselle Belle, hostess with the most S. Was it for this? The clays grew tall. So yeah, that was embarrassing. But yeah, you know, always nice to contribute. So sorry for the tangent there. Surrey House Museum, which is the main museum within Horniman, is called Surrey House Museum. Space opened in 1890, and in 1895, the gardens contained a water garden, a rose garden, and tennis courts. And yeah, even today, the gardens are full of incredible species. You've got like pharmaceutical plants in there, you've got roses, you've got loads of roses actually. You've got even a part of the garden that's dedicated to prehistoric plants. So they have a prehistoric garden, which is really, really nice, all big ferns. And you can kind of imagine how the landscape was before obviously the Horniman was there, before a lot of things were there actually, because it was obviously, like most parts of the earth, once a prehistoric bit of territory. Yeah, when it first opened, there was a wishing seat, a potting green, which is just so sweet, really. If anyone knows where the Horniman at Hayes pub is, it's actually on the south bank, and that pub is actually in remembrance of Horniman himself, Horniman's tea empire, the Horniman Museum, Quaker who came along and decided to deliver culture to the masses. So yeah, he was actually a member of Parliament, a member of the Liberal Party actually, which later introduced the reforms that I was talking about earlier, the welfare reforms that I was talking about earlier. Anyway, the Horniman officially opened in 1901. It's such a gorgeous building made out of limestone, and it's now a Grade 2 listed building. Shortly after its opening, Frederick Horniman actually died 2 years after, and he's actually buried in Camberwell Old Cemetery, which is just down the road. And the things that I like about the gardens is that they have these placards next to every bit of garden, so they'll tell you kind of some information about what's in there, and that's a really nice touch. If you go in to look at the walrus, you'll find it's kind of surrounded by all of these kind of, it looks like woodland wildlife, but you're surrounded by all this wildlife from all over the world that has been really, stuffed and preserved so well that they still exist there. That they look actually really impressive in the cabinets, frozen in time and very, very lifelike. So yeah, if you fancy getting a bit spooked, I'd go down there and just immerse yourself with these dead animals because it is something to behold. It's got all sorts of species from all over the world. Massive wooden totem pole actually stands outside the entrance, and that was actually carved by a genuine bona fide Native American. So yeah, he carved it, and yeah, it's a very sort of imposing and interesting totem pole indeed. And actually, just while we're here, the pole was carved in 1985 as part of the American Arts Festival by a guy called Nathan Jackson, and it's actually depicting an old Alaskan tale basically through the pole's carvings, and it's about a little girl who fell in love with a bear, and yeah, she married a bear, and there's like an eagle at the top. So yeah, it's sort of demonstrating the rich cultural heritage of the Tlingit people, a Tlingit tribe of the Native Americans of Alaska. So falling in love with a bear isn't as weird as it sounds actually. So this woman insults bears while berry picking encounters in the Alaskan landscape, and she encounters a bear who's actually in human form at the time, and it leads her to marriage. However, her brothers later track her down and reveal that her husband is actually a bear. And the story is supposed to illustrate themes of love, deception, and the consequences of insulting nature. So yeah, a kind of apt totem pole to have outside the Horniman. Are we insulting nature by putting animals in zoos? Are we insulting nature by stuffing them when they're dead and having them out on display? Probably. But in many ways, we're not insulting fellow humans in the sense that we're showing them love by saying, look, come and look at the wonders of the world. Because let's face it, you wouldn't put a human in a cage like that. It would be not just insulting, but massively abusive. And if humans die, they don't tend to put them on display. Although actually they do that in the catacombs in Sicily and various other catacombs across the globe. So one to ponder on. In retrospect, maybe it isn't disrespectful at all. Maybe it's just sheer reverence. Let's have a think. Let's have a communal think and discuss at a later date. So a place of magic, a place of death, a place of greenery. There's actually live animals. There's alpacas that walk around in cages at one end of the museum. Lots of goats and massive rabbit. It's about that big. It's absolutely enormous. My little brother asked me the other day, did I want to touch it? And I had to admit, no, it's just an absolutely massive white rabbit, and it's more striking than cute, if that makes sense. So yeah, no, I didn't want to touch it, but hey, go visit and tell me if you wanted to touch the white rabbit, because it sure was big and it sure was white and it sure was strange. So yeah, let me know. So either way, I hope this has given you a tiny bit of information. So I hope you've enjoyed this little missive on the Horniman Museum. Definitely worth going to see because there's lots of bits and pieces in there. Of course, if you don't go to see it for anything else, go to see it for that massive, fat walrus.